You have been told your hormones are just declining with age, that what you feel, the exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, the weight that diet doesn't move, the moods that arrive without warning, the body that no longer feels like yours, is simply what getting older looks like. You have been told to manage it, to accept it, that the only real option comes in a prescription bottle with a list of side effects longer than the benefits. That is not the whole truth. What you have not been told is that for thousands of years, physicians on 3 continents were treating hormonal decline with plants so precise in their action that modern endocrinology is only now beginning to map exactly why they worked. Not because the research doesn't exist. It does. Hundreds of peer-reviewed studies, decades of clinical trials, ancient physicians who documented results with a precision that still surprises modern researchers. But here is the problem with a plant. You cannot patent it. You cannot own it. And if you cannot own it, there is very little financial incentive to put it in front of you. Today, that changes. Plant number 4, used for over 2,000 years in Chinese imperial medicine exclusively for women in their middle years, was shown in a randomized controlled trial to reduce the most disruptive symptoms of hormonal decline by over 50%, without synthetic hormones, without side effects. And plant number 7, a root so revered in Ayurvedic medicine that its name literally translates to "she who has 100 husbands," was documented in the oldest surviving medical texts as the single most complete hormonal restorative known to ancient physicians. They had no idea what estrogen was, but they were not wrong. This is what we do here. Ancient plants, modern confirmation, healing rediscovered. Subscribe and hit the bell. The links for every herb covered today are in the description below. Here are the 7 forgotten herbs that fix your hormones, and one of them may replace what your doctor has been prescribing for years. Plant 1. Maca Root, Lepidium myeni. High in the Andes Mountains, at altitudes where almost nothing else grows, indigenous Peruvian physicians made an observation over 2,000 years ago that would take modern endocrinology until the 21st century to begin explaining. They noticed that the men and women who consumed a particular root, one that thrived at 16,000 feet in freezing temperatures and thin air, did not experience the same hormonal decline as those who did not. Energy remained, fertility persisted, mood stabilized. The Inca considered it so valuable that warriors consumed it before battle, and it was accepted as currency in trade with Spanish colonists. They called it the root that awakens the body's own fire. They had no concept of the hypothalamic pituitary axis, but they were describing it precisely. What makes maca extraordinary and different from every other herb on this list is that it does not contain hormones and it does not directly supply them. Instead, its unique alkaloids, macamides and macaridine, act on the hypothalamus and pituitary gland, the master regulators of your entire hormonal system. Think of it as recalibrating the conductor of the orchestra rather than replacing a single instrument. When the conductor gives the right signals, every hormonal gland, adrenal, thyroid, ovarian, testicular, begins producing what it should, in the amounts it should, at the times it should. This is why maca works for both men and women. It does not push estrogen or testosterone in one direction. It restores the system's ability to regulate itself. A double-blind, placebo-controlled trial published in Menopause, the Journal of the North American Menopause Society, found that postmenopausal women taking maca experienced significant reductions in psychological symptoms, including depression and anxiety, alongside measurable improvements in sexual function and energy. A separate meta-analysis in BMC Complementary Medicine confirmed improvements in sexual dysfunction across both sexes. To use it, 1,500 to 3,000 milligrams of gelatinized maca daily taken with food. Gelatinized, not raw, for optimal absorption. Give it 6 to 8 weeks. Caution: those with thyroid conditions should consult a physician first, as maca contains goitrogens. Links in the description. Maca recalibrates the system from the top. The next herb works further down the chain, with a precision that surprised even the researchers who studied it. Plant 2. Vitex/Chasteberry. Vitex agnus castus. For over 2,000 years, this plant carried a name that told you exactly what ancient physicians believed it did. The Romans called it agnus castus, the chaste lamb. Medieval monks consumed it to suppress desire. European midwives prescribed it for every disorder of the female cycle they encountered: irregular periods, painful cycles, the hormonal turbulence of perimenopause. 3 traditions. 1 convergent observation. That is not coincidence. That is accumulated human data pointing at a real mechanism. What those physicians had observed, without the vocabulary to name it, was Vitex's effect on dopamine receptors in the pituitary gland, which directly suppresses excess prolactin. Prolactin is the hormone that, when chronically elevated, disrupts the entire female hormonal cascade, suppressing progesterone production, creating estrogen dominance, driving the cycle irregularities, mood instability, breast tenderness, and perimenopausal symptoms that millions of women are told are simply inevitable. Think of it this way. Progesterone is the hormone of calm, of sleep, of emotional stability. Estrogen dominance, too much estrogen relative to progesterone, is the hormone of anxiety, insomnia, weight retention around the hips, and mood instability. Vitex does not add progesterone directly. It reduces the prolactin interference that was suppressing your body's own production of it. It removes the brake. Your system does the rest. A randomized controlled trial, published in the Journal of Women's Health and Gender-Based Medicine, found that Vitex extract significantly reduced PMS symptoms, including irritability, mood changes, headache, and breast fullness compared to placebo. A larger European study confirmed its effectiveness for cycle irregularities across a 12-week period. To use it, 20 to 40 milligrams of standardized Vitex extract daily, taken in the morning on an empty stomach. Consistency is essential. Give it 3 full cycles minimum. Caution: not for use during pregnancy or alongside dopaminergic medications. Links in the description. Vitex restores the progesterone balance that modern life quietly destroys. The next herb addresses the hormonal system that affects every cell in your body, and the one most doctors check last. Plant 3. Rhodiola Rosea, golden root. In the mountains of Siberia, Scandinavia, and the Tibetan Plateau, 3 entirely separate medical traditions arrived at the same plant independently. Viking physicians prescribed it for endurance and mental clarity. Tibetan healers used it for high-altitude adaptation and vital energy. Russian imperial physicians and later Soviet military researchers documented it for stress resilience and sustained performance under extreme conditions. The Soviet research was classified for decades. When it was finally declassified and entered Western scientific literature, researchers were not surprised by what it showed. They were surprised it had taken so long to find it. What rhodiola addresses is the hormonal axis that modern life attacks most relentlessly, the HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, the system that governs your cortisol response. Chronic cortisol elevation is the silent destroyer of every other hormonal system in the body. When cortisol remains chronically high, thyroid hormone conversion is suppressed. Progesterone is stolen to make more cortisol, what researchers call the pregnenolones steal. Testosterone declines. Insulin resistance increases. The entire hormonal orchestra plays out of tune because the stress system will not stop sounding the alarm. Rhodiola's active compounds, rosavins and salidroside, are adaptogens that modulate the HPA axis response, preventing the cortisol spike from becoming the cortisol flood. Think of it as a pressure relief valve on a system that has been running too hot for too long. A randomized controlled trial published in Phytomedicine found that rhodiola extract significantly reduced burnout symptoms, fatigue, and stress-related hormonal disruption over an 8-week period. A separate trial in the Nordic Journal of Psychiatry confirmed improvements in stress symptoms and emotional stability. To use it, 200 to 600 milligrams of standardized extract containing 3% rosavins and 1% salidroside taken in the morning, not at night, as it is mildly activating. Caution: avoid with bipolar disorder, may interact with certain antidepressants. Links in the description. Rhodiola quiets the stress system that was robbing your other hormones. The next plant was locked in imperial medicine for 2,000 years, and what it does for women in hormonal transition has no pharmaceutical equivalent. You have just learned that Maca recalibrates your hormonal master system without containing a single hormone. That Vitex restores the progesterone balance that chronic stress destroys. That rhodiola stops cortisol from stealing the raw material every other hormone is made from. This is what this channel exists to do. Ancient observation, modern confirmation, knowledge that was never lost, only forgotten. If this matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. The next 4 herbs go deeper. One of them has been used continuously for 2,000 years for exactly what you may be experiencing right now. Let's continue. Plant 4. Black Cohosh, Actea racemosa. Long before European settlers arrived in North America, the women of the Algonquin, Cherokee, and Iroquois nations had identified a plant growing in the forest understory that addressed something every woman in middle age eventually faced. They called it by names that translated simply to women's root. They prescribed it for the heat that arrives without warning, for the sleep that becomes elusive, for the emotional turbulence that accompanies the body's transition. Their knowledge was adopted by American eclectic physicians in the 19th century, documented extensively, and then quietly displaced when synthetic hormone replacement therapy arrived in the 20th century and promised something easier to prescribe. What those indigenous physicians had identified was black cohosh's unique interaction with serotonin receptors in the hypothalamus, the region of the brain that regulates body temperature. Hot flashes are not a hormonal event in isolation. They are a thermoregulatory failure caused by the hypothalamus misreading the body's temperature signals as estrogen levels decline. Black cohosh does not replace estrogen. It stabilizes the hypothalamic response that estrogen withdrawal destabilizes. The result is the same without the synthetic hormone. A randomized controlled trial published in Obstetrics and Gynecology found that standardized black cohosh extract reduced hot flash frequency by over 50% compared to placebo over 12 weeks. A Cochrane systematic review confirmed its effectiveness for vasomotor symptoms of menopause across multiple trials. To use it, 20 to 40 milligrams twice daily of standardized extract, standardized to triterpene glycosides. Give it 8 to 12 weeks for full effect. Caution: not recommended for those with hormone-sensitive conditions or liver disease. Consult your physician if you have a personal or family history of breast cancer. Links in the description. Black cohosh stabilizes the transition that medicine calls inevitable. The next herb works on the hormonal system that affects men and women equally and that almost no one associates with plants. Plant 5. Tribulus Terrestris, puncture vine. In 3 entirely separate medical traditions, Ayurvedic, traditional Chinese, and ancient Bulgarian folk medicine physicians documented the same observation about a thorned, ground-hugging plant that grew in dry, difficult terrain. Men and women who consumed it consistently maintained vitality, physical capacity, and what ancient physicians described as vital force, well beyond the age when their peers had lost it. Bulgarian Olympic coaches brought it to international attention in the 1970s when their athletes began producing results that drew scientific scrutiny. The research that followed was not what anyone expected. Tribulus does not contain testosterone. What its active compound protodiosine does is stimulate the pituitary gland to increase production of luteinizing hormone, which signals the gonads to produce more of their own testosterone and estrogen in natural, physiological ratios. Think of it as telling the system's own factory to increase output, rather than importing the finished product from outside. For men, this means improved testosterone production, energy, and physical capacity without the suppression of natural production that synthetic testosterone causes. For women, and this is what most people don't know, testosterone is equally essential. It governs energy, libido, muscle maintenance, and cognitive sharpness. Women in perimenopause and beyond lose testosterone as rapidly as they lose estrogen, and almost no one addresses it. A double-blind, placebo-controlled trial published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology confirmed significant improvements in sexual function, energy, and hormonal markers in both men and women taking standardized Tribulus extract. A separate Bulgarian study, the original research that brought this plant to modern attention, confirmed measurable increases in luteinizing hormone and downstream testosterone production. To use it, 250 to 750 milligrams daily of extract, standardized to 45% saponins, taken with food. Cycle it 8 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Caution: not for use with hormone-sensitive conditions or alongside testosterone therapy. Links in the description. Tribulus restores what both men and women lose silently after 40. The next herb spent 2,000 years in Chinese imperial medicine, reserved for the women of the palace who could not afford to age. Plant 6. Dong Quai, Angelica sinensis. In the Chinese imperial palace, there was a hierarchy of medicines. At the top of the hierarchy for women was a root called Dong Quai, translated as return to order, not return to youth. Return to order. Ancient Chinese physicians understood something that took modern endocrinology until the 21st century to begin articulating, that hormonal decline is not the loss of youth. It is the loss of the system's ability to regulate itself. And what they wanted to restore was not any single hormone. It was the order, the balance, the regulatory intelligence of the entire system. Dong Quai's active compounds, ferulic acid, and a complex of phthalides work on the body's estrogen receptors as selective modulators. In the presence of low estrogen, they provide mild estrogenic stimulation. In the presence of estrogen dominance, they compete for receptor sites and reduce excessive estrogenic activity. This is bidirectional hormonal intelligence, a natural SERM, selective estrogen receptor modulator, that pharmaceutical companies have spent billions trying to replicate synthetically in drugs like tamoxifen and raloxifene. Ancient Chinese physicians had it growing in their mountain gardens. Simultaneously, Dong Quai improves microcirculation, particularly in the pelvic region, addressing the physical symptoms of hormonal decline that no amount of hormonal supplementation fully resolves. Joint stiffness, dryness, circulatory sluggishness in the extremities. A study published in Fertility and Sterility examining Dong Quai's mechanisms confirmed its selective estrogenic activity and its role in endometrial health. Traditional use across 2,000 years of documented clinical observation in Chinese medicine represents the longest-running clinical dataset on any hormonal herb in history. To use it, 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of standardized root extract daily, taken with food. Caution: mild blood-thinning properties avoid before surgery and with anticoagulant medications. Not for use during pregnancy. Those with hormone-sensitive conditions should consult a physician. Links in the description. Dong Quai returns the system to order. Now the final herb, the one that does something no plant on this list does alone. The one whose name, translated from Sanskrit, tells you everything about what the ancient physicians who discovered it believed it could do. Plant 7, Shatavari, asparagus, racemesis. Her name means she who has 100 husbands, not because of desire, because of capacity. Because ancient Ayurvedic physicians, observing this climbing plant in the forests of India and the Himalayas over 3,000 years ago, believed that what it restored was not any single function, but the body's fundamental vitality, the deep biological resilience that makes everything else possible. It was listed in the Charaka Samhita, the oldest surviving Ayurvedic medical text, as the single most important rasayana for women. A rasayana is not a medicine for a disease. It is a substance that actively reverses biological aging. They prescribed it from puberty to old age, continuously, as the foundational support for the female hormonal system across every stage of life. They had no idea what phytoestrogens were. They had no concept of FSH or LH. But they were describing, with 3,000 years of clinical observation, exactly what modern research is now confirming at the molecular level. Shatabari's active steroidal saponins, shatavarins 1 through 4, act as phytoestrogens with a critical distinction. They are adaptogenic in their hormonal action. In women with excess estrogen, they bind receptor sites without fully activating them, reducing estrogenic load. In women with estrogen deficiency, they provide the gentle estrogenic stimulation that prevents the cascade of decline. Simultaneously, Shatavari modulates cortisol, supports thyroid function, reduces inflammatory cytokines that accelerate hormonal aging, and provides prebiotic support for the gut microbiome, which is now understood to be a primary site of estrogen metabolism and reactivation. Think of Shatavari as the intelligent foundation under every other herb on this list, where Maca recalibrates the master system, where Vitex restores progesterone balance, where black Cohosh stabilizes the transition. Shatavari supports the entire hormonal ecosystem simultaneously, the soil in which everything else grows. A randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology found that Shatavari extract significantly improved menopausal symptoms, hormonal markers, and quality of life scores over 12 weeks. Research published in the Asian Pacific Journal of Tropical Disease confirmed its adaptogenic and anti-inflammatory hormonal effects. Over 200 peer-reviewed studies now exist on this single plant. To use it, 500 to 1,000 milligrams of standardized root extract daily, taken with warm milk or food in the evening. Well tolerated. Caution for those with asparagus allergies. Not for use with hormone-sensitive conditions without physician guidance. Links in the description. 3,000 years, 200 studies. One plant that ancient physicians called the foundation of women's health. The original is not inferior to what replaced it. The original is what the replacements were always trying to imitate. 7 herbs. Here is how to build this protocol without overwhelming your system or losing track of what is working. Weeks 1 and 2. Start with Shatavari and Rhodiola only. Shatavari lays the hormonal foundation. Rhodiola quiets the cortisol system that was sabotaging everything else. These two together address the root cause before adding anything targeted. Week 3. Add maca in the morning with food. Give it 2 full weeks before evaluating energy and mood shifts. It builds gradually. Week 4. Add Vitex in the morning on an empty stomach. Consistency here is non-negotiable. It requires 3 full hormonal cycles to demonstrate its full effect. Start now. Week 5. Add black Cohosh if vasomotor symptoms, hot flashes, night sweats, sleep disruption are primary concerns. Add Tribulus if energy, physical capacity, and libido are the priority. Or add both. Week 6. Complete the protocol with Dong Quai, taken with your largest meal. What to expect? Weeks 2 to 3 improved sleep and reduced cortisol-driven anxiety, primarily from Rhodiola and Shatavari. Weeks 4 to 6 mood stabilization and reduced cycle-related symptoms as Vitex begins its work. Weeks 8 to 12, the deeper hormonal recalibration from Maca and the full vasomotor relief from black Cohosh becomes measurable. Be patient. This is restoration, not override. One essential note: this protocol is a complement to your physician's care, not a replacement for it. If you are currently on hormone replacement therapy or any hormonal medication, review this list with your doctor before beginning. All product links are in the description below. You did not arrive at this video by accident. Something brought you here. A tiredness that isn't fixed by sleep. A body that responds differently than it used to. A feeling quiet but persistent that something has shifted, and no one has given you a satisfying answer for why or what to do about it. Or perhaps you are watching someone you love move through this, and you feel the helplessness of not knowing what to offer them. That feeling is not weakness. It is your intelligence recognizing that the answers you have been given are incomplete. The physicians who discovered every plant in this video were not mystics. They were careful observers who documented what they saw across generations, across cultures, across continents, and they saw the same things, independently, again and again. Modern science did not disprove what they found. It confirmed it, study by study, mechanism by mechanism, the same plants, the same pathways, now visible at the molecular level. The knowledge survived, in Sanskrit texts, in Chinese imperial records, in the notebooks of Algonquin healers, in classified Soviet research files. What was lost was not the plants. What was lost was the willingness to look at a root, a berry, a climbing vine and say, "This is medicine. This has always been medicine." The body does not simply decline. It responds. It repairs. It rebalances when given what it recognizes. The healing was never lost. It was only forgotten. If this video served you, please like it, subscribe, and hit the bell. Leave a comment. Which of these 7 herbs surprised you most? Or tell me what brought you here today. I read every one. All links, products, doses, studies are in the description below. Take care of the body that has carried you this far.